What happens when a carefully orchestrated live television appearance turns into an absolute disaster that nobody saw coming? When years of pent-up frustration finally explode on national television in the most spectacular way possible? Today we're diving into one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history. A clash so intense that it ended with security being called and a guest being escorted off set. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because this story is absolutely wild from start to finish. The morning started like any other at the Live with Kelly and Mark studio in New York City. The production crew was buzzing with their usual pre-show energy, adjusting cameras and checking sound levels. Ripa sat in her dressing room, reviewing her notes for what was supposed to be a standard promotional interview. The guest was scheduled to discuss her latest charitable endeavors and upcoming projects. Nothing that seemed particularly controversial or challenging. Mark Consuelos was running through his opening remarks when the guest arrived with an entourage that immediately caught everyone's attention. The production assistants exchanged glances as they watched the group sweep through the hallway, demanding specific lighting adjustments and questioning the seating arrangement that had been carefully planned weeks in advance. "I need to make sure the angle is absolutely perfect," the guest announced to the stage manager, her voice carrying an edge that made several crew members pause in their work. "And I want to review every single question before we go live. Nothing should catch me off guard." Kelly overheard this exchange from her dressing room and raised an eyebrow. In her decades of hosting experience, she had worked with countless celebrities, politicians, and public figures. But she had never encountered someone who seemed quite so controlling about what was supposed to be a friendly morning show appearance. The stage manager, trying to maintain professionalism, explained that the show typically operated with a more spontaneous format. "We like to keep things natural and conversational," he said diplomatically. "Kelly and Mark are excellent at making guests feel comfortable, and the audience loves the authentic interactions." "Authentic?" the guest scoffed, her tone becoming noticeably sharper. "I think we have very different definitions of what authentic means. I've been in this business long enough to know exactly how these things work, and I'm not interested in being caught off guard by ambush questions." Kelly emerged from her dressing room just as this conversation was reaching its peak. She approached with her characteristic warm smile, extending her hand in greeting. "Good morning. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. We have some wonderful topics to cover." The guest's demeanor shifted slightly, returning the handshake with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yes, well, I hope we can stick to the agreed-upon topics. I've had some unfortunate experiences with hosts who think they can just wing it." Kelly's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered her composure. "Of course, we want you to feel comfortable. Though I have to say, some of our best moments happen when we just let the conversation flow naturally." "I prefer structure," the guest replied curtly. "Spontaneity is overrated, especially when you're dealing with sensitive subjects that the media loves to twist and sensationalize." Mark joined them, immediately sensing the tension in the air. "Ladies, we're going live in about 10 minutes. Everyone ready for a great show?" The guest turned to him with that same practiced smile. "I certainly hope so. I trust you'll both be professional enough to respect the boundaries we've discussed." Mark exchanged a quick glance with Kelly, both of them realizing that this interview was going to be far more challenging than they had anticipated. They had hosted thousands of guests over the years, but something about this particular person's attitude was setting off alarm bells. As they took their positions on the iconic couch, the studio audience was buzzing with excitement. The cameras began rolling, and Kelly launched into her opening with her usual enthusiasm and warmth. "We're back with a very special guest who needs no introduction," Kelly began, her professional smile firmly in place. "Thank you so much for being here with us today." "Thank you for having me," the guest responded, though her body language suggested she was anything but relaxed. She sat rigidly upright, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "So, let's start with your recent charitable work," Kelly continued, following the agreed-upon talking points. "You've been involved with several wonderful organizations lately." The guest's expression brightened slightly. "Yes, charity work has always been incredibly important to me. I believe that when you have a platform, you have a responsibility to use it for good, to shine a light on causes that might otherwise be overlooked." Mark nodded encouragingly. "That's a beautiful sentiment. Can you tell us about some specific projects you're working on?" As the guest began to elaborate on her various charitable endeavors, Kelly noticed something in her tone that struck her as odd. There was a performative quality to her responses, as if she was reciting lines from a carefully rehearsed script rather than speaking from genuine passion. "You mentioned using your platform responsibly," Kelly interjected gently. "That's something I think a lot of people in the public eye struggle with. How do you balance authenticity with the pressure to always present a perfect image?" The guest's posture stiffened, almost imperceptibly. "I think authenticity is about staying true to your values, regardless of what others might expect or demand from you." "Absolutely," Kelly agreed. "Though sometimes I imagine it must be challenging when there are so many different opinions about what those values should be." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. The guest's smile became noticeably more forced. "I'm not sure I follow your meaning." Kelly, sensing an opportunity to create the kind of genuine moment that made for compelling television, decided to gently push a little further. "Well, I think many people struggle with finding that balance between staying true to themselves and adapting to new circumstances or expectations." "Are you suggesting that I've somehow compromised my authenticity?" the guest asked, her voice taking on a sharp edge that made the studio audience shift uncomfortably in their seats. Mark quickly tried to intervene. "I think what Kelly means is that we all face those kinds of challenges." But the guest was no longer looking at Mark. Her attention was focused entirely on Kelly, and the carefully maintained facade of pleasantness was beginning to crack. "No, I'd like Kelly to clarify exactly what she's implying." Kelly felt the weight of every eye in the studio focused on her as she considered her response. The guest's challenge hung in the air like a loaded weapon, and Kelly knew that whatever she said next would determine whether this interview could be salvaged or would spiral completely out of control. "I'm not implying anything," Kelly said carefully, her voice maintaining its professional warmth despite the obvious tension. "I'm simply acknowledging that public life comes with unique pressures that most people don't have to navigate." The guest's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Unique pressures. That's certainly one way to put it. Though I suppose some people handle those pressures better than others." Mark leaned forward slightly, his instincts as a co-host telling him to redirect the conversation. "Speaking of handling pressure, your recent projects seem to show incredible resilience and focus." But the guest wasn't interested in Mark's attempt at diplomacy. Her gaze remained locked on Kelly. "You know what I find fascinating, Kelly? How some people in this industry love to make subtle digs while hiding behind the pretense of innocent conversation." The studio audience was dead silent now, sensing that they were witnessing something far beyond a typical morning show interview. Kelly's producer, watching from the control room, was frantically signaling to cut to commercial, but Kelly held up a subtle hand, indicating she wanted to see where this was going. "I'm genuinely confused about what dig you think I'm making," Kelly replied, her tone still professional but with a hint of steel creeping in. "I was asking about the universal challenge of maintaining authenticity in public life. It's something I deal with every single day." "Every single day," the guest repeated mockingly. "Right here in your comfortable little studio, with your adoring audience and your softball questions. Tell me, Kelly, what exactly do you know about real pressure?" The question hit the studio like a lightning bolt. Kelly's eyes flashed with something that her regular viewers had never seen before. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, realizing that his wife was being directly attacked on live television. "Real pressure?" Kelly's voice remained controlled, but there was an unmistakable edge to it now. "Well, I've been doing live television for over 2 decades. I've interviewed world leaders, covered breaking news, and yes, I've dealt with guests who seemed determined to create drama where none existed." The guest's facade finally cracked completely. "Create drama? You've been taking passive-aggressive shots at me since the moment I sat down, and now you want to play the victim?" "I haven't taken any shots at anyone," Kelly replied firmly. "I ask straightforward questions about topics that are part of normal conversation. If you're hearing attacks in those questions, perhaps that says more about your state of mind than my intentions." "My state of mind?" The guest's voice rose noticeably, causing the sound engineer to quickly adjust levels. "Are you seriously going to sit there and psychoanalyze me on live television?" Mark tried once more to intervene. "Ladies, maybe we should take a step back here." "No, Mark," the guest snapped, whirling to face him. "Your wife seems to think she knows something about my character, my authenticity, my state of mind. I'd like her to elaborate." Kelly's composure was being tested in ways she had never experienced in her decades of broadcasting. "I don't think I know anything about your character beyond what you've chosen to share publicly, but I am starting to understand why you are so concerned about spontaneous conversation." The guest stood up abruptly, her microphone pack nearly pulling her back down. What exactly is that supposed to mean? It means, Kelly said, also rising from her seat, that authentic conversations require a certain level of comfort with vulnerability and honest exchange. When someone comes in demanding complete control over every aspect of an interview, it suggests they might be afraid of what might come out if they just relaxed and had a normal conversation. The studio audience was now witnessing something unprecedented. Two women, both public figures, were engaged in what could only be described as a verbal battle on live national television. Afraid? The guest laughed harshly. You think I'm afraid of you? Of this little morning show fantasyland where everyone pretends everything is perfect all the time? I think you're afraid of being seen as anything other than the carefully constructed image you've built. Kelly shot back, her professional restraint finally giving way to genuine frustration. And when someone asks even the mildest question that might require you to be spontaneous or real, you immediately go on the attack. Real? The guest's voice was now loud enough that people in the hallway could hear every word. You want to talk about real? Let's talk about how you've built your entire career on being America's sweetheart while throwing subtle shade at anyone who doesn't fit your narrow definition of appropriate behavior. Kelly's eyes narrowed. I've built my career on being professional and treating my guests with respect, even when they come into my studio with attitudes and demands that would make a diva blush. Diva? The guest took a step closer to Kelly, her finger pointed accusingly. Did you just call me a diva on live television? I called your behavior diva-like, Kelly replied coolly. If that description fits, perhaps you should examine why. The tension in the studio was now so thick, it was almost suffocating. The audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether they should applaud, gasp, or simply sit there in shock. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. You know what, Kelly? The guest said, her voice dripping with venom. You can sit here in your perfect little world with your perfect little life and judge everyone else, but at least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. And what exactly do you think I'm pretending to be? Kelly demanded. Nice, the guest spat. You pretend to be nice while you systematically tear people down with your passive-aggressive comments and your holier-than-thou attitude? Kelly's last thread of professional restraint finally snapped. You know what's not nice? Coming into someone's workplace, making unreasonable demands, treating the staff like servants, and then attacking the host when they try to have a normal conversation with you. The guest's face flushed red with anger. Normal conversation? You've been attacking me since the moment I sat down. I asked you about charity work and authenticity? Kelly exclaimed, her voice rising to match her guest's volume. If those topics feel like attacks to you, maybe you need to ask yourself why. The studio had erupted into chaos. The audience was murmuring loudly. Some people were actually standing up to get a better view of the confrontation, and the production crew was frantically trying to figure out how to handle a situation that was spiraling completely out of control. The producer in the control room was now shouting into his headset, trying to coordinate with security, while simultaneously attempting to salvage what was left of the show. But down on the studio floor, the confrontation had reached a point where neither woman seemed capable of backing down. You want to know what I think? The guest continued, her voice now echoing through the studio. I think you've gotten so comfortable in your little bubble of fake niceness that you've forgotten how to interact with real people who don't kiss your feet the moment they walk through the door. Kelly's face was flushed with anger, but her voice remained steady. Real people don't walk into someone else's workplace and immediately start making demands and creating problems. Real people understand basic courtesy and respect. Courtesy and respect? The guest laughed bitterly. Like the courtesy and respect you've shown me by questioning my authenticity and implying that I'm somehow fake or manipulative? I never implied you were fake, Kelly shot back. But your reaction to simple questions is making me wonder what you're so desperately trying to hide. That comment hit like a nuclear bomb. The guest's entire demeanor shifted, and for a moment, the studio fell completely silent except for the low hum of the cameras that were still rolling. What I'm trying to hide, the guest repeated slowly, her voice now dangerously quiet. You really want to go there, Kelly? Mark finally found his voice. Okay, I think we need to take this down a notch. This has gotten way out of hand. But the guest spun to face him with fury in her eyes. No, Mark, your wife opened this door. She wants to talk about what people are hiding. Let's talk about it. Kelly felt a chill run down her spine, but she wasn't about to back down now. I'm not hiding anything. I've been completely transparent about who I am and what I believe. Transparent? The guest's voice was now loaded with venom. You sit here every morning pretending to be America's perfect hostess, but everyone in this industry knows exactly what you're really like behind the scenes." The studio audience gasped audibly. This had crossed a line that no one had expected, and the atmosphere became electric with tension. "And what exactly am I really like?" Kelly demanded, her own voice now carrying a dangerous edge. "You're a control freak who can't stand it when someone doesn't play by your rules," the guest declared. "You're passive-aggressive, manipulative, and you use your platform to destroy anyone who dares to challenge your perfect little image." Kelly's eyes blazed with fury. "You don't know anything about me or how I run my show. You walked in here with an attitude, made unreasonable demands, treated my staff poorly, and then attacked me when I tried to have a normal conversation with you." "Normal conversation?" the guest shrieked. "You've been trying to humiliate me since the moment I sat down." "The only person humiliating you is you," Kelly fired back. "Your behavior today has been absolutely appalling, and frankly, I'm embarrassed for you." That was the final straw. The guest took another step toward Kelly, her face contorted with rage. "How dare you? How dare you sit there and judge me when you don't know the first thing about what I've been through?" "I know enough to recognize someone who thinks the world owes them something," Kelly replied, no longer caring about maintaining any pretense of professionalism. "You came here as a guest on my show, and instead of showing basic respect, you've turned it into your personal therapy session." The guest's voice reached a crescendo that could be heard throughout the entire building. "Your show? Your show? You think this gives you the right to attack people?" "Nobody attacked you," Kelly yelled back, completely abandoning any attempt at controlling her volume. "You created this entire situation because you can't handle being treated like a normal human being instead of royalty." At that moment, two security guards appeared at the edge of the set, having been summoned by the increasingly frantic producer. The guest noticed them immediately and whirled around. "Oh, what's this? You're calling security on me now?" she demanded, pointing an accusing finger at Kelly. "I didn't call anyone," Kelly replied coldly. "But clearly someone thinks this situation needs professional intervention." The head of security, a calm professional who had dealt with countless situations over the years, approached slowly with his hands visible. "Ladies, I'm going to need everyone to take a deep breath here. Don't you dare patronize me." The guest snapped at him. "This woman has been attacking me on live television, and now she's trying to have me removed because she can't handle being called out for her behavior." Kelly's patience finally reached its absolute breaking point. "My behavior? My behavior? You have spent the last 20 minutes screaming at me on my own show because I asked you about charity work and authenticity. You are completely unhinged." "Unhinged?" The guest's voice cracked with fury. "I'm unhinged? You're the one who's been passive-aggressively attacking me this entire time?" The security guard stepped between them, his voice firm but calm. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. We need to de-escalate this situation immediately." "I'm not going anywhere," the guest declared, trying to step around the security guard to get closer to Kelly. "Not until she apologizes for her unprofessional behavior." Kelly's laugh was sharp and incredulous. "Apologize? For what? For asking normal interview questions? For expecting basic courtesy? For not treating you like you're above everyone else? For being a fake, manipulative person who hides behind a sweet smile while destroying people?" the guest screamed. The second security guard moved to flank the guest, while Mark finally stood up, his protective instincts toward his wife overriding his desire to stay out of the conflict. "That's enough," Mark said firmly. "You need to leave. Now." The guest turned her fury on him. "Oh, now the husband speaks up. How convenient that you stayed quiet while your wife was attacking me." "Nobody attacked you," Mark replied, his voice steady but cold. "You created this entire situation, and now you need to go." The head security guard nodded to his partner, and they began to gently but firmly guide the guest toward the exit. She resisted, continuing to shout at Kelly. "This isn't over," she yelled as she was escorted away. "Everyone's going to see exactly what kind of person you really are." Kelly stood there, breathing heavily, watching as the guest was led off the set while still screaming. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to applaud or simply sit there in shock at what they had just witnessed. As the guest's voice finally faded into the distance, Kelly slowly sank back onto the couch, her hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. Mark immediately moved to sit beside her, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. The studio remained silent for several long moments before Kelly finally looked directly into the camera, her composure gradually returning. "Well," she said, her voice still slightly unsteady, That certainly wasn't what we had planned for today's show. The audience erupted into applause, finally releasing the tension that had been building throughout the entire confrontation. Kelly managed a weak smile, but it was clear that she was still processing what had just happened. And that's exactly how one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history unfolded. A clash so intense that it ended with security being called and a guest being physically removed from the set. What did you think of this incredible confrontation? Drop a comment below and let me know whose side you were on during this heated exchange. And make sure to subscribe for more shocking stories from the world of entertainment.